not do you think it's just a temporary break in the carbon tax? Why not a temporary break to alleviate inflation on the carbon tax and federal taxes at the pump?
So what I've said last night with your colleague Yvan Solomon is the government has taken action and needs to take action to address affordability issues, particularly for those who live on modest incomes. That's what we've done through the GST rebate. But with respect to the price on pollution, the average family in Canada, in fact 80% of Canadian families, get more money back than they actually pay, and they get it back in a quarterly rebate. So climate change hasn't gone away. You still need to have a climate plan. Somebody needs to ask Pierre Poilievre whether he actually believes climate change is real and whether he's going to actually put forward a climate plan. At the end of the day, the carbon price is not driving the affordability issue, but of course we need to address affordability.
Do you think it's appropriate that we're debating the carbon tax at a time when Canada's dealing with a natural disaster like Fiona that swept through the East Coast?
Well, look, I think we always have to be careful of pointing to a very specific incident and saying that is caused directly by climate change. But we certainly are seeing all kinds of things happening around this country, including floods in British Columbia, including hurricanes like Fiona. And I think that, again, I would go back to climate change is real. If we do not deal with the costs associated with climate change, mitigating climate change now, the costs in the future are going to be astronomical. And so, again, I would say it's important for the Conservative Party, which is the opposition party in this country, to actually tell Canadians about what they are going to do going forward to address climate change.
Well, that'll be, the vote will be happening tomorrow, so there's not much time to wait for that.
So what's your personal opinion? Do you think we should be lowering the voting age to 16?
I think we'll have an opportunity to vote and discuss that tomorrow.
So you don't want to say now what you think personally as an MP?
No, I think it's important for Parliament to proclaim itself and for parliamentarians to have an opportunity to vote and proclaim themselves, and I'm happy to discuss that after that vote takes place.
Monsieur Holland, qu'est-ce que vous pensez de l'enquête qui est demandée par le NPD pour le prix de l'épicerie?
C'est un temps mondialement où le coût de vie est tellement haut. Et c'est vraiment difficile pour les personnes. Ça, c'est la raison pour laquelle on a les projets de loi pour aider les personnes, pour réduire pour aider les personnes avec le coût de vie. Et j'ai pas le chance de parler avec mon homologue, avec le MPD, mais tout le temps, je suis ouvert d'avoir une conversation, particulièrement sur un sujet aussi important que ça. Mais c'est important de prendre la vraie action, et ça, c'est notre objectif avec le projet de loi aux chambres de communes maintenant et toute notre action généralement. Merci beaucoup.
Turning the voting age down to 16, do you support that?
I don't think I'll be supporting it this time.
Why not?
I think it's something worthy of more study, but I don't think at this time it's the right thing to do.
And quickly, on Hurricane Fiona, just want to know, do you think it's appropriate to be debating the carbon tax at a time when the country's dealing with a major natural disaster?
I think it shows the lack of seriousness of the Conservative Party. This is clear. We're clearly in an era of more severe weather. We're clearly at a time where we're facing the effects of a climate crisis, and the first act of the Conservative Party is to limit our response on pollution and make it free to pollute. It's a shocking but unsurprising act by the Conservative Party, and we need to be focusing on the environment, and that needs to be a priority because we can see the cost of doing nothing is enormous.
They argue that the issue here is people in Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, New Brunswick, PEI, they're going to be dealing with increased costs as they still recover, because this is going to take a long time, and they're arguing that they shouldn't be facing the cost when it comes to carbon tax and increase and things like that. How do you respond to their argument as to why they're pushing this?
The cost of the cleanup will be billions of dollars, which the federal government will be there, but the cost of the cleanup is shocking, and Atlantic Canadians will be paying those costs for a generation. We need to be serious about the environment. We need to be serious about climate change, and the Conservative Party likes to talk about the cost of the carbon tax going up. They always seem to forget that the cost of the rebate goes up with it. So, thanks so much.
Le vote à 16 ans, pourquoi est-ce que le gouvernement vote contre le projet de loi de NPD?
Bien, comme vous savez, d'abord, les votes de députés, les votes de projets de loi privés sont des votes libres, donc notre groupe parlementaire a le droit de prendre la position qu'il veut. Évidemment, le gouvernement a pris une position contre, et je laisse le soin au ministre, c'est pas le whip qui discute de ces choses-là.
Mais est-ce que ça veut dire, parce que M. Leblanc a dit le gouvernement s'oppose, vous dites la même chose, je veux juste être sûr de comprendre, est-ce que ça veut dire que le cabinet voterait contre, mais que les autres sont libres?
Comme on discute toujours autour de ce processus-là, c'est certain que le gouvernement prend une position sur l'ensemble des projets de loi, et les députés, dans ce cas, cas-ci sont libres de prendre
Mais donc ma déduction est bonne. Le cabinet vote contre, les autres votent libre.
Le gouvernement a pris position contre le projet de loi, effectivement.
In English, please, on the vote.
Well, as we discuss every time these matters come up, the process is, and this is an innovation that this government has brought in, when a private member's bill comes up for a vote, members are free to take the position that they wish. The government, of course, as always, takes a position on the bill, and we proceed just like that. So it's essentially a free vote.
And what is that position of the government?
The government has taken a position in this particular case against, but members are free to vote as they wish.
Et pourquoi
We'll vote in favor of this?
Well, you'll have to ask members that.
pourquoi est-ce que le gouvernement vote contre?
Again, when you ask those questions of the whip, they should be better put to the ministers responsible.
Who's that? Because you keep throwing us back and forth to people.
Well,
Holland threw us to
I
you,
don't throw,
and now
I don't throw you anywhere, but
So who should I ask?
Non, mais vous êtes sûrement au courant du rationale.
oui,
dans
mais
votre
le ministre de la
réforme.
réforme démocratique, donc il y a un ministre, je crois, M. Leblanc, qui
Monsieur Lametti,
There is no
pourquoi est-ce que le
Democratic
gouvernement s'oppose au vote?
well, yes, there is a minister representing in his portfolio, and that's Mr. Leblanc.
C'est pas une question brûlante. On sait que la réforme démocratique est toujours un enjeu. Et il y a des opinions évidemment divergentes là-dessus. Mais c'est quelque chose où je ne me suis pas prononcé
Mais le gouvernement
publiquement.
vote contre, donc j'essaie juste de savoir pourquoi.
Projet de loi privé. Des fois, avec des projets de loi privés, il y a des enjeux, des conséquences qui ne sont pas nécessairement réfléchies dans un projet de loi. Et donc, il faut une étude plus approfondie.
Mais justement, pourquoi pas l'envoyer en comité? C'est ça, c'est une étude plus approfondie.
Des fois, comme j'ai dit, la réforme démocratique est toujours un enjeu très important. Mais il faut un contexte, une analyse, et des fois, un projet de loi n'est pas le véhicule pour le faire.
Minister Chandra in Alberta yesterday said that he'll order the RCMP not to collect guns that are part of the buyback program. Is that even legal? Is that something that the federal government will contest?
I would be highly surprised if the RCMP or any other police force in Canada did not do their legal duty and enforce the provisions of the criminal code. Thank you.
If the Alberta government...
Monsieur Holland, si le vote à 16 ans, pourquoi est-ce que le gouvernement vote contre?
Il va y avoir un vote aujourd'hui et ça va être une chance pour chaque député de voter avec leur position. Et je suis prêt de parler sur ça après le vote, mais c'est une chance dans quelques heures pour le vote.
Est-ce que c'est un vote libre?
C'est une question pour le whip, c'est pas pour moi.
Mais parce que M. Leblanc vient de dire que le gouvernement s'oppose. Donc j'essaie de clarifier, est-ce que le cabinet s'oppose ou tous les libéraux s'opposent?
C'est une question pour le whip encore.
I mean, your House leader, so...
Right. I mean, but the question of what happens with the vote is a question for the whip. Okay.
What do you think, Minister, of Alberta saying that it is going to ask the RCMP not to enforce the federal law on, the gun ban and gun buybacks?
Well, there have been instances where we've worked very closely with Alberta when it comes to priorities related to public safety. For example, just last week, Minister Chandro and I and the Siksika Nation issued a trilateral joint statement where we agreed that we would work together to bring back a Siksika police service. So there has been good collaboration at the federal level and at the provincial level in Alberta on some very important issues. That having been said, when it comes to the buyback program, let me just take a step back. Assault-style rifles are not used for hunting. They're used and were designed to exert the most amount of lethal force in the shortest period of time. And they have been used in a number of mass shooting tragedies in our country, including in Portapique and Truro, including at the Quebec City Mosque, including at Polytechnique, including in my hometown of Toronto and the Danforth. And that's why this government took the judgment to ban assault-style rifles in this country. The reason why it's important now to implement the buyback program is to get those assault-style rifles out of our communities once and for all. And so this is a federal law, and I think it bears repeating that when it comes to the matters of regulating firearms, that the courts have repeatedly held that this is an issue that falls within the jurisdiction of federal government. And therefore, it is our hope and our expectation that we will work collaboratively with all provinces and territories to see this plan come to fruition so that we can better keep our communities safer. I saw Minister Chandro's letter. I think to say a few things off the top. First, I think it's extremely regrettable. We, as I said, do have, I think, a collaborative relationship on other priorities related to public safety, and I would like to see us continue to have a dialogue about that. But to simply say that you're not going to cooperate, you're going to resist, does not allow us, I think, to move forward to accomplish the objective of this program, which is to take these deadly types of firearms, these assault-style rifles, out of our communities once and for all. So we'll continue to work with all of our provincial and territorial partners. We'll continue to work with law enforcement. We'll continue to work with industry. And we'll continue to work with law-abiding gun owners because we remain resolute in doing everything possible to getting these guns, these assault-style guns, out of our communities.
Monsieur Mendicino, comme ministre de la Sécurité publique, ce serait vous qui seriez responsable de désigner les gardes de la Révolution islamique comme une entité terroriste. Où est-ce qu'on en est là-dessus? Est-ce que le gouvernement veut les désigner comme entité terroriste?
Mais écoute, tout d'abord, il faut exprimer nos pensées avec les familles de les victimes la dernière semaine à Iran. Il faut attribuer nos pensées, nos supports, nos appuis pour toutes les femmes qui sont oppressées au Iran. Canada, il jouait un rôle essentiel partout au monde pour défendre les droits des personnes, même les droits des femmes, les droits des groupes vulnérables. Et nous avons déjà listé le IRG Quds, qui est un groupe qui est un facilitateur de terrorisme. Et le processus n'est pas partisan. On va continuer d'assesser les situations avec nos fonctionnaires, avec nos partenaires dans l'espace de secteur public, mais on va toujours défendre les droits des femmes et les droits des personnes.
Do you expect the RCMP and local police forces to ignore what Mr. Chandro has told them and has directed them?
Well, let me just say right off the top that the decision to ban assault-style rifles is one that falls within the exclusive jurisdiction of the federal government. And as the courts have repeatedly held, including dating back to a reference question which was brought by Alberta in 1999 all the way up to the Supreme Court of Canada, they have repeatedly reaffirmed that when it comes to matters of regulating firearms, including the decision that we took, that this falls within the four corners of the jurisdiction of the federal government. That is well-established law based on well-established jurisprudence. As a result of that, of course, we would expect that any law on the books will be enforced by law enforcement. And as we look to get these assault-style rifles, which again have carried out extensive, massive casualties in our country, it is imperative that we work together collaboratively. What I said earlier is that we have forged a good cooperative relationship with Alberta on other matters related to public safety, including bringing back the Siksika Police Service. We issued a joint statement with them last week, and my hope is that we would be able to do the same here. But to simply issue a letter saying we're going to resist, we're not going to cooperate with the federal government is wrong. It's an abdication of responsibility. It's an abdication because it suggests that any province has the ability to opt out of a federal law as it relates to firearms. We all know that that's not accurate, and more importantly, that's not the way that we keep our community safer. So it's important that we make good on this program because we have to be resolute in getting these types of guns out of our communities once and for all.
What happens
Sorry, I can't hear you all at once.
You know,
Go.
what happens if Minister Shandro actually follows through on this? Is there a scenario where Alberta could impose some sort of order to the RCMP that are contracted to be provincial police there?
Well, just again, to be clear, even as contracted under the provincial-federal arrangement, that, including in Alberta, where the RCMP are the provincial police of jurisdiction, those police of jurisdiction still apply the law as it relates to the criminal code. And therefore, and they still apply the law as it relates to the Firearms Act. And that's how our federation works. It works together. We work together with provinces and territories to ensure that we can keep our communities safe. And that is precisely what we intend to do in the matter of both banning firearms and buying them back because they have no place in our community. Look,
it sounds like you're saying it's reckless.
Well,
So should he retract those comments?
I certainly don't think that it is helpful to say at the front end, you know, we're not going to cooperate, especially since jurisdiction has been well established on this matter now for well over 20 years. And so what is important is that we get into an understanding of how we're going to implement this program so that we can get assault-style rifles out of our communities once and for all. We have an obligation to do that, to make sure that we do justice and do right by the victims and the families who I've met with, who I've looked in the eye, and who have been asking the federal government, successive federal governments, not just our government, but conservative governments and liberal governments alike, to do the right thing and to get these assault rifles out of our communities once and for all, and we intend to make good on that.
Les migrants qui sont encore emprisonnés, qui font des demandes d'asile au Québec et en Ontario. Est-ce que le gouvernement fédéral songe à mettre fin à ces ententes-là avec les provinces?
Mais écoute, sur la question sur notre système d'asile, c'est un problème complexe. Il n'y a pas seulement une solution. Le programme d'immigration, il impacte nous au Canada, il impacte les États-Unis, il impacte tout le monde. Donc, ça, c'est la raison qu'on doit continuer de collaborer avec le gouvernement de Québec.
Est-ce qu'on va continuer de les emprisonner? Est-ce que ces ententes-là vont être enlevées?
Mais nous sommes en train de moderniser l'entente avec les États-Unis. C'est un processus que j'avais travaillé sur, que mon homologue, le ministre Fraser, a travaillé sur. Et le but de cette entente est de protéger les droits des réfugiés, d'assurer qu'il y a des conséquences légales s'il y a des abus de le système, et troisièmement, de renforcer le niveau de coopération qu'on peut accomplir tout au-dessus. Donc, c'est un problème, je sais, qui est tellement complexe, mais on va continuer de faire des investissements nécessaires pour protéger notre système d'asile.
Juste sur les migrants, pour continuer là-dessus, Éric Duhem au Québec qui n'exclut pas la nécessité de construire un mur à la frontière entre le Canada et les États-Unis. Vous pensez quoi?
Simplification, mirage, ça ne marche pas. Et la raison est parce que la réalité est que les migrations et les pressions causées par la migration est une responsabilité que tout le monde partageait. Et ça, c'est la raison qu'on avait négocié une entente avec les États-Unis. Ça, c'est la raison qu'on collaborait toujours très fort avec le gouvernement de Québec, avec l'argent, avec des fonds, avec des ressources, avec des services sur le terrain pour accueillir les réfugiés. Ça, c'est la façon qu'on peut réduire la pression. Et le gouvernement fédéral restait toujours dévoué à chercher des solutions concrètes. Merci beaucoup.
Referendums in Ukraine, your thoughts on that?
Sure. First of all, and I say this sort of respectfully, I think it's really important for us not even to call them referendums. We all know that words matter. These are not referendums. These are a fake. They are a sham, and they are recognized by the whole world as such. What this shows is that Putin understands he's losing. It's a good thing for him to lose. This is an illegal and barbaric war. And what we all have to do now is double down on supporting Ukraine. The sooner Ukraine wins, the sooner the torture and the death ends, and the sooner the global economy can get back into doing our job of recovering from the COVID recession and bringing prosperity to the people of our countries. En français, je pense que c'est très important d'être clair. Ce ne sont pas des référendums, ce sont des simulacres. Ces simulacres démontrent que Poutine comprend qu'il est en train de perdre la guerre, de perdre cette guerre qu'il a commencée, cette guerre illégale, cette guerre barbare. La chose importante pour nous, pour le Canada, c'est de continuer d'appuyer l'Ukraine, de permettre aux Ukrainiens qui sont si courageux de finir la guerre avec une victoire, parce que la fin de la guerre, ça signifie la fin de la torture, la fin des meurtres. Merci beaucoup.
Well, I think these are sham referendums. They're designed to, this is right out of Russia's playbook. They did this in 2014 when they held sham referendums in Crimea, and that allowed them to claim that the people had chosen to join Russia, which is in fact not the case. Many of the people who are living in these territories are having armed soldiers and police knock on their doors to collect votes from them. And these outcomes of these referendums were predetermined by Russia. We all know that. All of this is part of the playbook to be able to, for Russia to be able to argue that they have, these are indeed territories that now belong to Russia legitimately, which of course is not the case, and to claim that this is Russian territory. So if the Ukrainians continue to try to advance, continue to try to retake these territories, that this is an attack on Russia. But in reality, we know that this is a sham. We know that the world has condemned these referendums. The Western world, democratic world, has condemned these, refused to recognize their legitimacy. The House of Commons passed a motion unanimously the other day that I introduced that indicated that we condemn the referendums, that we refuse to recognize their legitimacy and will never recognize their legitimacy. And in fact, the House of Commons in that motion indicated that that the government should continue to support Ukraine and in fact continue to provide more military aid, more humanitarian aid, more economic aid, impose harsher sanctions. So I think it's important that the world signal that we will not accept the legitimacy of these referendums, and in fact we will only work harder to support the Ukrainian people until they win and until all of Ukraine's territory is under the sovereign control of Ukraine.
What's your priority when you say the government should do more?
As was indicated in that motion that was passed unanimously by the House of Commons the other day that I introduced, we need to continue to provide more military aid, impose harsher sanctions on Russia and on its leaders, continue to provide further financial aid to the Ukrainian government so that they can help finance this fight. I think we need to support Ukraine until all of Ukraine's territory is once again under the sovereign control of the Ukrainian government.
Canada is also trying to work the room at the UN Aviation Council to stop Russia from regaining membership. Does it have allies there? Do you know how that's going?
I'm not briefed on the specifics of those conversations, so it's difficult for me to say.
Well, what should Canada make? I mean, obviously, last week you heard, was it last week? Well, Putin's recent threat to use nuclear deterrence or defense if Russian territory is violated. As you point out, this is an effort to claim territory for Russia in Ukraine that now there will be a hot conflict in. Is there any concern, or how should Canada handle that type of a threat that's already been issued by the president of Russia to use nuclear power to defend its territory?
Yeah, I mean, this is part of Russia's playbook, Vladimir Putin's playbook in recent years. We saw it with Crimea, and we're seeing it again. I think at the end of the day, it's important that we, as Canadians, the Western world, realize or remind ourselves that this attack, that this war, is not just a threat to Ukraine's security or its independence or the freedom of its people, but it's a threat to all of us. It's a threat to our security, to Canada's security, the global security. When we look at the inflation and the cost of living that so many Canadians are facing, that my constituents are facing, a large part of that, whether it be food prices or energy prices, the increase in those prices is caused by Russia's war on Ukraine. So until Ukraine wins this war, and regains all of its territory, prices will continue to be high, the humanitarian risk to hundreds of millions of people around the world will continue, and our security and democracy will be threatened. So we need to answer your question, well, our response needs to be to support Ukraine all the more and to continue to support Ukraine with that military aid, with that economic aid, with that humanitarian aid, with that financial aid that I was talking about, until all of Ukraine's territory, including Crimea and Donbass, are once again part of Ukraine. That's the only way we can help the Ukrainian people win this war, but it's also the only way we can ensure that we all win together and prevent the inflation stop the inflation that we're all struggling with, address the security risks that we're all struggling with, and address the humanitarian issues that are affecting hundreds of millions around the world.
In the meantime, should the federal government, reduce the federal tax on gasoline at the pump, or, temporarily curtail the carbon tax to give Canadians a break on inflationary prices?
I think the government has spoken to the importance of, we have a number of measures that are part of the package, billions of dollars worth of measures to help Canadians cope with the rising cost of living. And I think those measures are there to help Canadians as they work through this. At the same time, we need to continue to fight climate change, and we continue to take the measures necessary so that we can avoid the kinds of environmental disasters that cause harm around the world, that have caused harm just this past week in Atlantic Canada. So that's the approach that I believe in, and I'll continue to support.
Was the Nord Stream leak a deliberate sabotage?
That's being investigated at this time. Certainly, I know that many countries in the EU have indicated, the EU has indicated that they believe that it was sabotage. So we'll have to wait for the investigation of that before we draw any conclusions. But it certainly appears that way.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
What do you think about the investigation of food prices? Is this something that the government's looking into?
Well, the committee, I understand there's going to be a motion at some point today. You tell me if you got a copy of the motion. I've yet to see the motion, but no. So we'll see what Mr. McGregor will put forward today, and we don't see an issue with looking at this. But the committee's already adapted a subcommittee report just this week for a plan up until Christmas time. So we'll see how Mr. McGregor wants to work. But we can work with the opposition on this for sure. Sur la langue française, pour ma part, je veux pas. J'ai beaucoup appris comme député ontarien. Je me mêle pas des affaires du Québec, mais je pense que notre projet de loi C13 répond aux attentes des francophones partout à travers le Canada.
Contre un projet de loi qui va améliorer la place du français.
Je pense que les consultations qui ont été faites avec C13 sont approfondies. Puis, elle répond à tous les francophones partout à travers le Canada. Merci.